Eric, you raised an issue that you wanted to present to Eric Stakelbeck. Would you mind going ahead, please?
Well, it's something we've heard discussed quite a bit, especially in the conservative media. But I think we need to bring it up here again. You know, when you think about our politicians from the president down, so many of them have resisted, especially those who are controlled by the administration itself. They have resisted using the word Islamic and terrorism together. I realize that goes against their talking points, but is this just PC at its worst? Is it their own particular ideologies? I mean, are there Muslims who are pulling the strings in the background, maybe from the side of the stage, directing things, or at least trying to? Or is it simply that they don't want to have the money supply cut off from the very rich who are Islamic?
I think it's a little bit of all of you mentioned, Eric. I think, number one, in terms of people pulling the strings in the background, it's no secret that the Obama administration is advised by individuals and organizations that are connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. I actually wrote about that in my last book, which was called The Brotherhood. So that's no secret. There's individuals connected to that Islamist who have the ear of this administration. So I think that plays a part, basically striking from the record, from the lexicon, any use of the words jihadist, Islamist, etc. Another part of it is political correctness, which is the purview of the left. But I think the most important part, and I'm talking about the president directly, Eric and Jan, is leftist ideology. The president is, in my view, a radical leftist. And that worldview, his worldview, is that America and Israel are the problem, not the solution in the Middle East. We are imperialist powers who have oppressed the Muslim nations around the world. We've given them no economic hope. We've kept them down. And we need to get out of the Middle East and let them do their thing. That comes from that leftist ideology that sees America as a problem and not a force for good, but a force for evil in the world, and sees Israel the exact same way. I think that's the main thing driving it at the end of the day. And look, this ideology means that you're not too fond of Judeo-Christian Western civilization. Well, Islamic civilization, which President Obama clearly, he has a positive view of Islam. That's without question. I mean, anyone supporter, not supporter, would have to agree to that. Islamic civilization is about as far as you can get from Judeo-Christian Western civilization. So hence, the left embraces it.
No Chrislam allowed. I was thinking about this last night, Jan, that Chrislam is such a non-issue when you begin to think about ISIS, even though there are still people out there pushing that idea. So what we really see here is you've got on the one side, you've got the president, and you've got so many others that are so friendly to Islam, and on the other side, you see the great fear that is in people's hearts. And folks, let me bring up that I don't see any candidates on the right now who have Muslim Brotherhood backing them, but we know on the left we have a candidate whose assistant is directly tied into the Muslim Brotherhood, and we all know who she is, and I could say her name, and I have no problem saying it, but that's the truth. I mean, we've got the Muslim Brotherhood in the White House and coming if they can get there.
Right. Huma Ahmadine has been Hillary Clinton's assistant for many years. You know, an observation I made recently, I think this morning even, police are likely to be called racist far more frequently and faster than an Islamic jihadist, be it Garland, Texas, Fort Hood, the beheader of the woman in Oklahoma 8 months ago, will be called an Islamic jihadist. It's going to take months to years before that'll ever happen. Police being called a racist will happen in a nanosecond. It's the tide of our times. It's tragic, but it is what it is, as the saying goes. And by the way, folks, if you want to learn more information, visit his website. It's ericstakelbeck.com, ericstakelbeck.com. And the book is in any bookstore. You'll find it in any bookstore, Christian or probably secular as well. Are you concerned, Eric Stakelbeck? You talk about it in the book, and you raise concern in your book, so that's a rhetorical question. Are you concerned? Because you say that America is simply unprepared if these folks return from the battleground and form the cells that you talk about in the book.
Yeah, I am very concerned, Jan. Not only is the average American unprepared, but at the governmental level, we're unprepared. Look, ISIS's strategy at the end of the day is to turn American and European cities into really guerrilla war zones, where you're seeing an attack like we had, the sort of attack like we had recently in Garland, Texas, for instance, or that we've had in Boston with the Boston bombings, Fort Hood, what we saw in Paris back in January 2015, what we saw in Ottawa back in October 2014. Those kind of small-scale, low-tech attacks. You can turn yourself into a one-man or one-woman jihad. ISIS calls these folks city wolves and is telling them to rise up in American and European cities. You know, Jan, at the end of the day, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to walk into a shopping mall, yell Allahu Akbar, and start firing. If we see these kinds of small-scale, I call them chip-away attacks, on a regular basis in the U.S., and ISIS is saying that this is coming. This is what they're calling for. If we see that, that's a big problem. It's going to cause psychological terror, number one. It's going to cause economic terror. Let me give you a quick example of where we're at with this. In Australia, Sydney, September 2014, and a cell of ISIS supporters was broken up, thankfully. They had planned to randomly kidnap someone off the street. Some poor soul just walking to work in the morning. These ISIS supporters were going to randomly kidnap him or her and behead them for the cameras. That is the climate we're in right now. Yes, the jihadists are planning, they want to top 9/11 without a doubt, but in the short term, they have come to the very real and correct conclusion that this smaller scale chip away strategy can be very, very effective.
You also bring out in the book, you bring out a couple of points I want to hit on before time runs away from us, that you are not confident. And the one person here that you name kind of stuns me a little bit. I mean, first of all, you're not confident that Barack Obama, and then you say, and FBI head James Comey have things under... I'm troubled when the FBI doesn't have it under control.
You know, it was interesting, Jen. Comey, back in the fall of 2014, where ISIS really, Americans started emerging, were being killed on the battlefield fighting for ISIS. Comey kind of downplayed the threat. And he said, well, we've had a few, we're keeping an eye on them. And I was discouraged. But in February, after the book went to press, he, in a rare moment of candor, he admitted that right now, in all 50 U.S. states, we have investigations ongoing into ISIS-related activity on American soil. So our own FBI director is saying that we have a network of ISIS supporters and sympathizers in every state in the union right now. So the barbarians are not just at the gates, they're inside the gates. I was surprised by Comey's candor. That's a big deal. We have investigations into ISIS-related activity in every state in the union. That's a big deal. Why aren't we hearing more about this? And, I've been called an alarmist to bring this out. Oh, this is like screaming the boogeyman's going to get you. Look, I tell people, would you rather know or not know? If you don't like the message, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to mince words.
Right.
For such a time as this, I'm going to be honest, and I'll leave all the consequences to God. But someone's got to say it, and I'm glad you do it every week on this show, Jan and Eric, and I'm trying to do it as well, and just do as God is leading.
Amen.
Do